have two situations happening at the same time.
The 2020 hurricane season is here, and even with the additional challenges of the pandemic,
To our memory, we've never had that happen before.
we need to be ready for the storm.
It does make things a little more difficult to do, but we're confident that we can get them done.
Our team of storm tracker meteorologists may be social distancing, but we're still working day in and day out to make sure you get the information you need to stay safe in this new normal. Our 2020 Ready for the Storm special starts right now. The Lowcountry has been through plenty of hurricane seasons, but none quite as challenging as this one.
Challenges like how can you keep your emergency kit stocked during this new normal? And how would social distancing work during an evacuation order? We'll take a look in just a few minutes.
With all of these challenges, it's easy for anxiety to build up during the season. Later in the half hour, we'll talk to a mental health professional to find out what we can do to deal with these challenges.
So we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the numbers. We knew it was going to be an active year even before the season started, but the National Hurricane Center did update their forecast mid-season. This was the beginning of August, and right now it's looking like 19 to 25 named storms, 7 to 11 hurricanes, 3 to 6 of those major hurricanes. We have an 85% chance of an above average season. And speaking of the peak of hurricane season, it is coming up within about a week and a half or so. And we're looking at the peak climbing usually late July into August, and then there it is, September 10th, the normal peak. And once we get past that, things do drop off fairly quickly, except we do see another spike there between October and November. But we already know it's been active, record-breaking, and it's going to continue to be active. We've crossed off many names so far this year. Laura is just finishing up in the center of the country. Our next name is Nana, and then Omar. Here are the hurricane tracks across the Atlantic Basin. There were a few that started out here in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, but notice the concentration of those storm systems in the western Atlantic, the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, all very close to the United States, including here in the Lowcountry. Hurricane Laura, very similar to what we saw with Hurricane Hugo. It made landfall near Cameron, Louisiana, and the similarities to Hugo, it was a Category 4. The winds were 150 miles an hour. Hugo was 140. The pressure was very similar when it made landfall. And that storm surge around 20 feet there along the Gulf Coast, that swath of damage was spread far inland all the way up toward Shreveport, just like we saw with Hugo here, which took the damage all the way up to Charlotte.
We did get a good trial run for what will likely be a busy hurricane season. In particular, we had the opportunity to beta test the new sheltering strategy, which we had to evolve in light of the coronavirus.
Earlier this month, Isaias made its way up the coast. It put new COVID-safe shelter systems to the test in Florida. Shelters that weren't used here in the Lowcountry. But what's the plan if we do have to use them? Storm tracker meteorologist Sonia Stevens gives us a look.
Wind, flooding, storm surge, tornadoes, all hazards associated with hurricanes. But this year, the goal is to not only keep everyone safe from those elements, but also to keep everyone healthy.
If in fact an evacuation order is given by the governor's office, the counties and the cities are going to support that decision, and we're going to recognize that water is the leading killer in a hurricane, and we're going to ask you to leave.
They know not everyone has a place to go, which is why shelters would be opened up. Although this year, the sheltering plan is different in an effort to prevent the spread of the virus.
We want people to be safe. We want our workers to be safe. We want those to show up to our shelters to be safe.
And that means 110 square feet of space per person, enough room for a cot, and the proper amount to be social distancing.
We're increasing, I should say, standoff distances for social distancing, which is going to decrease the amount of available space that we have.
In Charleston County alone, there will be 2,839 fewer shelter spots available during hurricane season. And unfortunately, lower capacity is always something that this coastal county has to deal with.
Shelter space is obviously very limited here in Charleston County due to amount of storm surge we could experience.
These shelters of a last resort are called that for a reason. We would prefer you go find someplace else of high ground, family, friends, someplace out of state where you're safe.
But if you have nowhere else to go, these shelters will be open under strict guidelines.
There would be a health screening process in place for everyone coming into the shelter, checking the temperatures, and then an isolation area for anyone with symptoms or high fevers. We would make sure that folks had masks.
Fruit salad also. And the way that meals are served would also change.
So we wouldn't have, mass feeding times at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We'll stagger those feeding times out. We will only be serving individually, wrapped meals.
But even with this extra challenge, all those involved at the state and local level are still determined to keep you safe this hurricane season. Meteorologist Sonia Stevens, ABC News 4.
Thanks, Sonia. Other counties are feeling the impact of COVID too. Dorchester County says it has 3,600 less spaces. In Berkeley County, that number is over 3,400. Colleton County will have over 1,000 less spaces.
If an evacuation order does get sent down, the westbound lanes on I-26 could be reversed. The lane reversal plan was developed back in 1999. It was first implemented in 2016 and has been used 3 times since then. If that happens again this year, the process would look a little different. Reverse lanes will now be shortened by about 15 miles. The reversal will now start at Nexton Parkway near Somerville. Access to Charleston International Airport will not be restricted under the new system. When drivers get to Columbia, they'll no longer be required to get on I-77. Instead, they'll be able to continue on I-26. Finally, additional entry points will also be added through the 90-mile stretch between the Lowcountry and Columbia.
If you do need to evacuate, there are some extra items you'll need to bring with you this year to keep you safe from COVID. Our storm tracker meteorologist Jennifer Collins shows us what you should add to your hurricane preparedness kit.
2020, it's been a weird year, but something that isn't weird is hurricane season. We see it every single year, and something you should have to prepare for the storm is a hurricane kit. I've laid everything out that you need before, during, and after the storm to keep you safe and prepared. Something you'll need is water. This includes 1 gallon of water per person per day for up to 7 days. Another thing is non-perishable food, making sure you have a 7-day supply of non-perishable food for everyone in the family. This includes Ritz crackers, canned food, canned meat, and get something that you and the family will enjoy. That includes peanut butter, goldfish crackers, or for me, it's pudding. Another thing you'll need for your hurricane kit is a first aid kit. You should have this on hand anyways, but something you certainly need in your hurricane kit will be one of these. Something with bandages, first aid gloves, as well as alcohol wipes is great to have on hand, especially after the storm if you are doing cleanup. Another thing you should need, those flashlights. Flashlights on hand, something that you can exchange with batteries, or those hand crank ones really work well as well. And another thing you should have on hand is possibly weather radio. These keep you notified with National Weather Service alerts before, during, and after the storm. It also has an alarm clock included, so something that's pretty cool within that. Paper towels, trash bags, as well as paper plates, something you can throw away without having to use any water. Something else to consider is making sure you have enough food for your pets. I have a cat, so I make sure that I keep around food and water as well as cat litter to make sure that I'm prepared for my pets as well. For your dogs, that might include a leash as well as dog food. Another thing, since it's 2020, we gotta add something to the hurricane kit. That includes face masks as well as hand sanitizer. If you do plan to go into any shelters, you'll be required to have one of these at any shelter. So these are items you should probably have in your hurricane kit. Maybe keep it in a plastic container so that it's easy to remove and store during and after the season. We'll have a full list of what you need in your hurricane kit. That'll be located on abcnews4.com. For now, reporting from my home, meteorologist Jennifer Collins, ABC News 4.
Still to come, storm surge is on the top of everyone's mind every time the Lowcountry has a close call with a storm. But how does it work and which areas have the highest risks? Chief Storm Tracker Meteorologist Dave Williams explains.
Welcome back. It's the greatest threat to life and property from a hurricane. Storm surge can be most threatening to those living close to sea level, which is the majority of us in the Low Country. Chief Meteorologist Dave Williams explains the science behind this deadly impact.
Storm surge is one of the most dangerous parts of a hurricane. It's also one of the most difficult to forecast. It's essentially a bubble of water on the surface of the ocean, generated by relentless winds, often in excess of 74 miles per hour. This rise in water grows depending on the strength of the winds and the size of the storm. When a hurricane makes landfall, the storm surge races inland and can advance well over a mile, especially into harbors, rivers, and tidal creeks. Here's a lunar-influenced high tide, and just look at how high the water comes up the beach. Now, you only have to add a few feet of storm surge on top of this high tide, and the dunes are gonna be breached. Once that happens, you're gonna see buildings, roads, and houses crumble. The highest storm surge occurs just to the right of the eye of the hurricane at landfall, and it makes a huge difference which side of the storm that you're on. Due to the counterclockwise flow of low pressure, the right side of the storm is stronger. This is why the angle of approach is crucial to the amount of storm surge experienced. The right side of the storm has the surge, while the left side has little, if any. The angle of approach can determine if the storm surge will come into a concentrated area or spread it out over a larger swath. Perpendicular landfall is the worst, while parallel may not be good, but certainly the lesser of two evils. I've got my goggles on, and I'm set to conduct an experiment. This is between perpendicular and parallel motions of a storm to the coast. Now, I've got my eggs marked here with their hurricane symbol, and they're set to unleash their own storm surge fury against this table. First of all, we're gonna take the perpendicular strike, and the perpendicular strike unleashes everything right here in a very confined area. There's your storm surge. Now, with a parallel strike to the coast, that pushes the storm surge along a lot farther reach. It's not all in one area. It slides up the coast. Perpendicular strikes have been devastating across the coast of the Carolinas, even with storms like Florence just a few years ago. And the Low Country knows Hugo pushed a wall of water more than 20 feet high into McClellanville. Storms that parallel the coast, like Matthew, Dorian, and Isaias, spread the surge farther north and typically give a smaller rise in water level. The one thing I want you to take away is that if you're susceptible and forecast to get the surge, evacuate. It could be a matter of life and death.
If the storm surge is a concern with a hurricane here in the Low Country, storm surge watches and warnings would be issued by the National Hurricane Center.
We are facing some unprecedented challenges this summer. We have to deal with the stress of a pandemic. We have the stress that comes with hurricane season. Our storm tracker meteorologist Emily Gracie talked to a mental health expert to find out how we can take care of our mental health through it all.
David, thank you for joining us. Very important. I mean, we're amid a pandemic right now, and then we're heading into hurricane season. And a lot of people, when they talk about mental health, they talk about depression, but anxiety is a huge problem, especially right now, correct?
Yeah, depression is more mood and dealing with sadness, where anxiety is more fear and anxiety. And the reality is that all of us, especially during this time, as we know here in the Low Country with hurricane season, all of us experience anxiety related to a natural phenomena, whether it be the pandemic or the hurricane. And yet this double whammy is really going to have and it is having an impact on people in our community.
So when we talk about the season coming up, is there anything that we can do to prepare for possible anxiety levels going really high before a storm is even formed, before there's even that threat here in Charleston?
Yeah, I think the main issue, both with the pandemic and hurricane season, is this lack of control, that we feel. And in today's modern society, we're always so we have this view that we have this mastery, and so when something like this comes up, it really can wreak havoc. So I think small steps, things that you can take to take back control, things like just being informed through proper news channels in terms of being able to forecast and prepare, having a plan, both an evacuation plan and a stay-at-home plan. I think what's really critical now is with the pandemic is, factoring that in. If you're going to visit family in the mountains in North Carolina, what's the social distancing strategy? Hotels, what are they doing around that piece of it to protect you? All those sorts of things, and then just knowing what resources are available to you so that you can access them.
And then kind of in crunch time, let's say there's an evacuation ordered for here in Charleston. What can you do in that moment when anxiety levels are getting really high to deal with that?
Yeah, I think it's important before that ever happens, is as a family or as a group, or if you have a social network, you can really go down a rabbit hole where irrational thinking kind of takes hold and you have trouble making decisions. And so being able to check each other and calm down and take a moment and recognize that there are things you can't control, just take it step by step.
And if you do need help, where can someone reach out for help, say if they feel like it's gotten to the point where they can't handle it themselves?
Sure. And we're very fortunate in the Tri-County area here. We have a lot of resources, especially mental health resources. And the South Carolina Department of Mental Health, which has 16 mental health centers across the state. We have 2 here. One is Berkeley Mental Health Center, servicing Berkeley County, and then Charleston Dorchester Mental Health Center, which serves Charleston and Dorchester County. They have a clinic in Somerville and one in West Ashley. And we also have a new resource support line called SC Hopes. And it's 1-844-SC-HOPES. And it's a collaborative effort between the South Carolina Department of Mental Health and the South Carolina Drug and Alcohol Commission. They have a team that's available at any time. It's anonymous, it's free of charge, there's no cost. And people can call and get mental health help and resources, as well as substance abuse and addiction help and resources.
David, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Sounds like there's some great options there.
Yeah, thanks so much for the time, Jennifer.
Misinformation can be detrimental to your hurricane response. So, how can you be sure the information you get is accurate? We'll find out next.
We have some new people that have moved into the state and some that may have forgotten some of the precautions that are necessary. But we ask you to stay informed, to stay tuned.
Accurate information is key during hurricane season. Still, misinformation gets spread nearly every time a storm forms. This can be detrimental to your hurricane response. So what can you do to dodge that misinformation and stay informed? Our Sonia Stevens takes a look.
You want to follow local degreed meteorologists that not only understand the science behind tropical systems, but also know the local area. Now, people that aren't meteorologists like to post things like this: spaghetti plots, a bunch of computer models that show possible storm tracks. Now, I'm showing this example from September of 2019. I posted it on my Facebook page, showing that there was a lot of uncertainty. Look, the spaghetti models spread out all over the place. But this is a perfect example because here is the official track. That Invest 95L eventually became Hurricane Umberto, never even made landfall in the United States. So just make sure this hurricane season that you follow the Storm Tracker weather team. No drama, no hype. And here is where you can find us on social media.
One place you'll always be able to find accurate information is with the ABC News 4 Storm Tracker weather app. And here it is. You can scroll down, you can get your watches, you can get your warnings. It has interactive radar, and also you can get your own video forecast right here to your hands. You can get the app for yourself. Just head to your app store and search ABC News 4 Storm Tracker. Kids are one group of people that we can't let be misinformed. So our Emily Gracie wanted to see what they know about hurricane season.
Where do hurricanes come from?
Hurricanes go through the ocean. Hurricanes go not in the forest, but by the trees. Kind of come to Charleston, South Carolina.
What is the difference between a tropical storm and a hurricane?
Well, tropical depression is, maybe smaller. When there's a hurricane coming and the wind makes everything get windy, it can, take all the stuff out of your house.
Wow. Have you seen that happen?
No,
How do you know it happened?
because I keep it in my brain. Be up and we get all wet. No people go out in a hurricane because they might get sucked away and never come back again. Who knows where they would land? They have a lot of wind and they can wash bugs away.
Wash bugs away?
Yeah. Well, the wind is strong, it can blow trees down and the wind gets very hard. I've never felt a hurricane, but I think it's really cold pressure. A hurricane's very strong and they can blow down trees and then just takes them away forever. And just blows into the ocean, then they just sink down to the bottom. Like a whale shark. A whale shark's bigger, very big. Even a whale shark's bigger than me. A whale's bigger than me too. A whale's bigger than any other creature.
You are now spinning counterclockwise, just like a hurricane. What should we do if a hurricane comes here?
We evacuate, and then the whole place gets flooded with water.
That's all the time we have for our 2020 Ready for the Storm special. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, next time a storm forms in the Atlantic, our team of storm tracker meteorologists is always working to keep you safe. Have a good night.